Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 128 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. We call these episodes Fraternity Foodie because there is nothing like great food to bring people together. Today, we have with us Chris D.T. Gordon, a brother of Theta Chi Fraternity from the University of Michigan, Flint, who inspires and motivates audiences with his signature talks called The Attitude of Gratitude, and also Pass on Perfection and Go for Greatness. I can't wait to dive in with them. Let's welcome to the show, Chris D.T. Gordon.
Hey, Mike, thank you very much for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I love hearing new stories, and your life experience is just so interesting. I think our audience is going to be completely fascinated by it. So I can't wait to jump into this conversation. But of course, we like to get a little bit of background on all of our guests. So tell us, why did you decide on the University of Michigan, Flint for your undergraduate experience?
Mike, I wish I had a really inspiring tale to give. Maybe one day a giant block M fell in front of me before I walked out of a building, and I was just enamored with its beauty from not crushing me to death. But the honest truth is, I don't know. When I was preparing to graduate from high school, I was enamored with video games, and this is the time of the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, and I felt I wasn't, I was smart, but I wasn't really focused on the future. I was just living in the moment. And I did get a scholarship that helped me along a little bit in school, but I just wasn't driven. And when I look back at it, I shake my head, because I think of all the things I could have accomplished if I had been more, more inspired, just more fired up to do something. But, I was a little bit spoiled, and not like Richie Rich way, but I came from a very solid middle-class family. My dad was a general foreman at GM. In fact, he worked at Buick City, Plant 10. He worked in that plant all his life. He started as a janitor and worked his way up to general foreman. And so he was pretty comfortable. And so we were pretty comfortable. I didn't feel any real need or desire or anything to spur me on to really push toward one thing. And so when it came to picking schools, I was like, well, I like Michigan, and Ann Arbor's way too expensive, and I honestly didn't get good enough grades, but U of M Flint's right there. Let's go there. And it turned out pretty well.
That's great. That's a really great story. And listen, I mean, video games are still a big thing, so it's not like they went away or anything like that. But we're of a similar generation, and I remember playing video games all the time. I remember, very distinctly playing like Risk and other games that we were playing, whether it be online or the board game. Certainly Sega Genesis. I mean, I think about Sonic the Hedgehog and all those characters that were running around there at Sega Genesis.
Oh yeah, it is a fun time. I have a modified Nintendo Mini downstairs that has a lot of those games on there. So I'll take my kids down memory lane sometimes, and we'll play on there. So yeah, they still are a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, totally. Whenever I play those games, I get taken right back to that moment. And there's something very soothing about playing those games. It calms me right down, and it brings me back to a really fun time in life.
Yeah, then you realize, wow, my skills are so bad now. I can't even get past the first world of Mario,
It's so true. My son is playing Xbox now, and like I look at the combinations that they're using today and what we were using back then, and it's like I am so inept at playing today's games. That is the conclusion that I've come to.
Yeah. I think the most complicated thing we had to do is up, down, left, right, BA, start.
That's right. And we still know how to do it, right? But that was
Yeah.
the most complicated that you would find, that would be like on Contra or, a similar game.
Yep.
But anyway, those were the days, I tell you what. All right. So you joined Theta Chi Fraternity on campus. What made that particular chapter special to you?
You know, I was looking for, I joined in my sophomore year, and I was looking for a way to just get more involved in school. And I checked in on them before I rushed. And I found that their motto was the helping hand. And I had always been raised to help others out. I wanted to make my experience with a Greek society more than just partying, and I wanted to mean something more than just social. I wanted to have something meaningful behind it, and that's why I rushed them, and it really panned out well for me.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And you also have a master's degree in special education, learning disabilities. You have a bachelor's degree in elementary education. You've got 4 teaching licenses with over 15 years of full-time teaching experience, including what I found to be really interesting, 8 years for an online public school. So I'm wondering what motivates you to do the work that you do, teaching special ed online well before this pandemic started.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what motivated me. My wife, pregnant with twins. At the time that we found out that we were going to have twins, we had one child, and I was teaching in a school about an hour away from where I live. I live in Newell, Ulm, Minnesota now, and I was teaching in a very small school, and I had been there for 3 years. It was actually, I can remember it just like yesterday. It was the Tuesday of in-services, back to school in-services. And I get this email from my wife, Becky. It's an ultrasound with 2 heads.
Oh my God.
And I didn't see anything about conjoined there. So I knew there were 2 normal kids. And so immediately I thought, okay, I can't teach here anymore because one kid, when you're driving 50 miles one way, doable. 3 kids under 4 in the same scenario, not going to work. And so I did finish the school year there, but then during the summer after that school year, I was hired at Minnesota Virtual Academy, and that was in the summer of 2012. And so this is my 9th year teaching there, and I absolutely love it.
That is great. That's
an
amazing story.
Yeah, it is. And people sometimes they don't like balk, but they give me a questioning look, like, special education online, and we make it work. We have meetings on Skype. We follow the law. I am part of the only unionized online school in Minnesota. So a lot of them are chapter schools or charter schools. Charter schools. I'm part of a public school system, and so I pay union dues, part of the union, and I have tenure. And so it is a really nice situation, but you also have to be very disciplined, very self-sufficient, and very driven to be able to work in this environment. And now that I learned how to be driven and self-motivated, it works well for me.
Now you can teach the rest of us how to keep students' attention on a Zoom session, because who knows it better than you, right?
Sometimes it takes a few voices. And I am an 80s kid. Sometimes it takes some Transformers,
there you go.
So I have a few tricks up my sleeve.
Yes, you do. That's awesome. And you recently started pursuing motivational speaking engagements designed to inspire and motivate people based on your life experience. And this is what's really fascinating about you. It includes your hospitalization and recovery from what's called necrotizing fasciitis, or otherwise known as flesh-eating bacteria. So tell us about what happened to you. How did you realize that you had necrotizing fasciitis, and how does that impact your life today?
Well, one day when I was helping Becky get the kids off to school, I was flying my younger son, Seth, to our detached garage to put him in the van. He was being a little pokey, so I thought I would help him out by picking him up and flying him back and forth. Well, I veered too far to the right and scraped the back of my right hand on my garage wall. Now, Mike, I'm a former boy. I've gotten scrapes before. I didn't think too much of it. I put him in the van. I kissed them all goodbye. Then I went back into the house to wash out my wound and start my day. 3 days later, I wake up and I have a lacrosse ball sized bump on my right elbow.
Wow.
I usually don't wake up like that. So I went to the urgent care here in New Ulm. They said it might be fasciitis, but keep an eye on it and let them know what happened. If there anything else happens. Over the next 10 hours, that bump grew and grew and grew until my right arm was triple the size of my left. I looked like the Incredible Hulk in mid-transformation. And not only was my right arm really huge, I was also lethargic, I was nauseous, and Becky quickly found a babysitter for our kids. Then she drove me to the emergency room. They quickly admitted me because who's not going to admit a guy with a large right arm? But then they found out I was also septic. And sepsis is basically an exaggeration of the body where it pumps a chemical into the bloodstream to fight off infections. However, sepsis has a mild little itty bitty side effect of killing you because of septic shock. So I was in a pretty dire situation, but the doctor who came to see me the next morning, they kept me overnight, said that they could do nothing more for me. Her words were, "This is beyond us, Mr. Gordon. Where do you want to go?" I live in Minnesota, so of course I said the Mayo Clinic. So they loaded me into a hard light plane. They flew me to Mayo, and that's where I was diagnosed with necrotizing fasciitis. In fact, they actually had another patient with NF in the hospital, and not only did he lose his arm, he died anyway.
Oh my God.
Yes, NF is there's 700 to 1,200 cases annually, and the depending on the comorbidity of the patient, the percentage of death can go from 30% to 60%.
Wow.
And at one point, I had a 1 in 3 chance of survival. So what they did was they put me under, and the first surgery was removing all the infected skin. And so it's basically everything from the back of my right hand all the way up to my shoulder, to the base of my neck, down through my chest, and around my back. In fact, I can kind of show you what it looks like now there.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, if you're familiar with Deadpool, I look like a discount Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
and they even had to take off a nipple there. So when I go to the beach, I take off my shirt, my chest looks like it's winking at people. And but also you probably noticed this weird flap of skin I have on my right arm there. The infection had gone so far into my right hand and arm, they were certain they would have to amputate. That's what they told Becky before the second surgery. But luckily, the occupational therapist in attendance saw that it still had hand function. So they elected to remove a 15-inch by 4-inch flap of skin from my left thigh and place it on my right hand and forearm. And since it's my thigh on my hand, I call it my thand. But being a runner, they also had to take out one of my leg muscles, my vastus lateralis, from my left thigh. And so I have whenever I wear running shorts and I have to wear compression shorts, I have a little divot in my leg where the muscle used to be. So I'm Deadpool on top, and with the knobs they use to tighten my wound in my leg, I'm Frankenstein on bottom. And they also had to take a skin graft harvester. Just think about that for a second. A skin graft harvester. What sounds like a piece of farming equipment, they ran over my skin to take off slices of skin to put on my infected areas after they had been cleaned out. And so I have racing stripes up my back and on my thighs. And if, I'm a ginger, so tanning before was tough. Now it's impossible.
Wow. So how does that impact your life today? How does that come into play every day for you?
Well, physically, my volleyball block is not what it used to be because skin grafts are rather tight.
Right.
So I have a little flap of skin here that keeps me going. I mean, this is with some effort. Whereas right here, my left arm can go straight up. My right arm, I really got to force it. I mean, I can get it there, but I really have to work at it.
Right.
Skin grafts are also non-porous, which means they don't sweat. So when I go running outside during the summer, I have to be very careful to have some water with me to pour water on the skin grafts to keep them cool. However, I am a champ at the polar plunge because skin grafts also don't have very many nerve endings. So I can jump in a little vat of cold water and not in the right side of me is okay. But in which also there's a double-edged sword to that because I don't feel things. I also don't feel things like bumping elbows, which has happened before. I bumped my elbow and caused a cut. And I'm wearing a sweatshirt. I have that sweatshirt on all day. I take it off to get ready for bed. Why is that wet? Why is there blood on my hand? I didn't know. I had no idea because there are very few nerve endings. But that's how I've changed mostly physically. It's what happened to me mentally that really has changed my life. When I had awakened from a coma that lasted 5 days, I was taking stock of what had all happened, what my life was going to be like. And I was not going to be the same. I was, if I had a perfect body like I was designed, that was no longer the case. I was torn apart. I was ripped the shreds, literally, in order to save my life. And so I was altered. But Becky started telling me about how people had stepped up for us, how they had donated sometimes thousands of dollars to help me out, help our family out. They donated food and toys to my kids because during the first 2 weeks of my hospitalization, I was in the hospital for 65 days. During the first 2 weeks, Becky and the kids stayed with her parents who happened to live in Rochester. So they were without most of their toys, very few clothes. So people donated clothes, toys, food to them to help them out. People were back here in New Ulm, people were shoveling our walkway and our driveway. It was amazing how people were stepping up for us. And when Becky told me all this, I developed what I call the attitude of gratitude, because it would have been very easy for me to become negative about my situation, become angry, always asking why me? Well, what did I do to deserve this? But instead, because of that gratitude and the love I felt for those people who felt love for us, I started looking at all the things that I had going for me. And that really started a snowball effect to where I felt that I needed to share my story. And so, as you said, I did start speaking engagements last year. In fact, I had one February 25th at my church. Of course, we all know what happened a few weeks later. So I needed to pivot my approach because I knew I couldn't speak in front of people, but I also need to keep sharpen my speaking skills. So I developed a podcast called Scar Bearers. And initially I started sharing my own story, but then I realized, there are a lot of other people who have stories to share that can inspire others. So I started interviewing other people on my podcast, and I still do. In fact, I had an interview before I started talking with you. And so while things are starting to open up again, I still keep the podcast going, but we are still in a very weird holding pattern. Most of us are. I mean, there's some people who are really suffering from COVID, but we're all in an area of change. I like to think of it, being a comic book geek. This is a collective, a global origin story. And the choices that we make going forward will really determine how our lives end up. And we can either, like I did in the hospital, we could either choose to be negative and angry and perhaps depressed about the changes that have been forced upon us, or we can be positive and look at all the things we have around us that make life better for us and choose a life of gratitude.
Yeah. I love that story. I love your attitude of gratitude. I think it's amazing. As fraternity men that we are, I talk about that with fraternity and sorority students all the time about how privileged we are to be at a higher institution, higher education institution, and that we have an obligation as fraternity men, as sorority women, to have service in our lives, to give back, to be public servants, to make our communities. I mean, you live in Flint. I mean, talk about communities that could use the help. I mean, we have an obligation to do something, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh
Yes.
man, we are blessed beyond comprehension, and we just have to give back. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I fight so hard for fraternity and sorority, is to make sure that continues.
Yes. And I think, Mike, that starts with realizing how much you have in your life.
Yeah.
And I don't mean in terms of money. I mean in terms of everyday items. Like, for example, this pen. It's an ordinary average pen you can get at the store. But when you need to write something down, it becomes immensely valuable because it's serving a purpose. You think about the lights in your house. How much does a light bulb cost? But when it goes out, man, you are searching high and low in that closet for one. And so being able to find gratitude and value for the things in our lives, no matter how small and seemingly insignificant, can make even the most ordinary person feel wealthy. And I think by taking that approach, that's the first step to developing true gratitude and helping others see that in themselves.
That's a great message. Your other signature talk is pass on perfection and go for greatness. So why do you feel that chasing perfection is futile and people should just accept their imperfections?
Well, Mike, when we look at an ad, be it on TV or on a billboard, yes, it may look flawless. But there's two things about that. First of all, how long did it take for that picture to be just right? Did they, if you look at a commercial, how many takes did they have to run through before they got the dog to go to the right bowl of food, right? Secondly, those images of perfection are fleeting. They don't last. And so even a Major League Baseball pitcher might throw a perfect game, but that's not every game. That's, most pitchers don't even achieve that. In my life, as I said before, my body is forever altered. I can no longer be perfect. Again, discount Deadpool here. But if I work hard and I stay committed to any task I put my mind towards, and I stay dedicated to that dream, sure, I might achieve some sort of perfection once in a while, but I know that with that commitment and that drive, I can always be great. And I think that if everyone develops that mindset of passing on perfection, don't worry about being perfect. Okay. It might come, it might not, but focus on that dedication, that commitment to excellence, that commitment to yourself and to others. You will always be great. And that is more important than being perfect.
Yeah, that's really well said. I wonder how much impact social media has on this generation chasing perfection. When you think about all of, the different features on, Instagram and, everything else that people are using in terms of filters and everything else. I mean, they're chasing perfection. That's really what they're trying to achieve with, the different ways the camera is situated, with the filters that they're putting on. It's all about perfection. And so I feel a lot of it is driven by social media too.
Yes, there is that culture of trying to stand out, and trying to be the perfect blank, whatever that may be. But yeah, I definitely agree that it's more about being yourself and being the best version of yourself. And that includes being imperfect, because we relate so much more, or so much better, to people who make mistakes, because we ourselves make mistakes.
Sure.
Can you imagine being around someone who was flawless all the time?
No, I can't, because
Yeah,
I know how many
exactly.
mistakes that I've made. I've made mistakes as the president of my chapter as an undergrad. I made mistakes, all along the way in my career as executive director of my fraternity. I make mistakes today in the speaking business all the time. And I always say that because of those mistakes, that is going to help me get to where I want to go. I'm far from perfect, but I think it does help me succeed because I make those mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. So you also you're a recommended black belt in Taekwondo, which I'm sure has taken you many years. Talk about chasing perfection, right? So why are you so dedicated to your craft with Taekwondo?
Well, actually, this again stemmed from my idiocy as a teenager. I was in Taekwondo in my middle school and beginning high school years, but I got bored with it and I quit. But as the years have gone on, I I secretly told myself, well, if I join Taekwondo again, I'm going to go through the black belt. Well, it just so happened that the fall after my hospitalization, my older son Josh started Taekwondo. I bided my time, and after he had been in it for a year, I asked him if I could join him, and he said yes, thankfully. And so we studied together for the past 4 years. And so now I am right now working towards my final test for a black belt. And it is simultaneously easier and harder than I would have thought. I mean, easier in terms of I now have the discipline to learn all the different forms and different combinations. It's harder because I'm 46 and my hips don't flex. They're not as flexy as my hip flexors need to be for some of those kicks.
Right.
So I really got to work at that.
Good for you. I love
Thanks.
that story. I love that you didn't give up on it and you just went right back at it. And now here you are, recommended to black belt. That's really awesome. So
Thank you.
what's next for you as you look out 5 years from now? What are the types of things that get you excited about the future, and what does that look like for you?
Well, I do have a few goals. My first goal is, well, first of all, to be the best husband and father I can be, and that I believe that my current endeavors are helping me towards that, because I need to have time management, because I'm a husband, a father, a full-time teacher, a speaker, a recommended black belt, a runner, and I'll talk about that in a second, and I'm a couple other things as well. And so in order to survive and thrive with those demands, I have to be dedicated and organized. So, doing that will help me become the better, best father and husband I can be. Then there is the speaking. I want to continue speaking. I believe that my message is bigger than myself, that if I were to keep it to myself, I would be, as you said earlier, I need to serve. It would be a great disservice for me to keep it all to myself, because many people have told me before they are inspired by my message. And if they are inspired, who else can be? So I want to keep speaking and, perhaps keep doing the podcast as well, because other messages are important. I also, as a runner, have a goal of qualifying for Boston, the Boston Marathon. And I set my goal for by 2030. And so I'm going to keep training for that. In fact, one of my best friends, also a fraternity brother, Dave White, he and I are going to run a 50-kilometer race in Montana where he lives on my 50th birthday, or at least my 50th year. And so we have that. And then there's just wanting to be able to serve at my highest capacity is what I want to do in the next 5 years. You know, I mean, if you asked me 6 years ago, you know, what I would be doing, I definitely would have said, well, I'm going to be almost killed by my garage wall and, you know, have some permanent cosplay plastered on my arm. And then, you know, hand a severed hand to Mark Hamill at a comic book convention, which happened. But, you know, so I can't really say for certainty what's going to happen, but that's what I would like to do.
That sounds awesome. And you're right. I mean, one thing leads to the next and you don't always expect it. I mean, you know, who would have thought that, you know, being a fraternity man would ultimately lead to this career and speaking to college students all across the country? I don't think any of that's possible for me without the fraternity, without those leadership skills, the communication skills, the motivation skills in working with that team on a college campus and refining those skills before I got out into the real world. I think I owe it all back to the fraternity. And I think that's why I'm such an advocate. It's, you know, I know what it's done for me. I know what it's done for guys like you and, you know, other fraternity men, sorority women around the country. And so I really believe in that. And, you know, it's just interesting how one thing leads to the next. And if you were to tell me that, you know, all of these things would happen, I would probably say there's no way. But here we are.
Yes,
so
yes,
it's, you know, I feel very fortunate to have all those opportunities in life. That I'm just grateful. I'm grateful. That's really good. And, you know, we do love good food here at Fraternity Foodie. So we don't shy away from that. And since you're living in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, I was wondering, what's your favorite restaurant out there? And what do you usually order?
You know, I don't make it up there too often, but the last place we went, again, my best friend and the fraternity brother, Dave, and his son, Pete, came to visit us a year and a half ago. And so there is this place called the Bacon Social House, which is about a block away from US Bank Stadium. They have over, I think, like 36 different types of bacon.
Ooh,
My personal favorite is the jalapeno bacon. But it is a well-designed place. You know, it looks like an old school diner. You know, it's got the booths and everything, but it's a really nice place. The bacon, as you can guess, is phenomenal. So I would check it out. I'm sorry I can't remember the name of the street it's on, but it is a block away from US Bank Stadium.
All right, we could all find that. That sounds absolutely amazing. You know, recently I've been on this beef jerky kick, and then the company that I order the beef jerky from online, they also have buffalo chicken jerky that they make, and then they're also making a jerky with bacon too. So that kind of reminded me of that. And they literally, it's just like slices of bacon in the little package, just like it's beef jerky. And it sounds real good. And I was tempted. I have had the buffalo chicken variety of the jerky, and it's fantastic. I just ordered a bunch more to get to my house along with some beef. But now that you're talking about that bacon, now it's starting me to think, I'm like, I need to try the bacon variety and see how that is. So,
it is fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds really good. All right. So if any of our listeners, if they want to connect with you, maybe on social media, maybe they want to book you on their campus, what's the best place for them to go and to connect with you?
Well, there's one place they can go, Mike, and that's linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon. It's one site that has my podcast link, my YouTube link, a link to a book I helped write called Blue Talks Presents Business Life in the Universe, Volume 3. It has my online store, Chris DT Gordon's Tag and Pop Shop, where I have some merchandise that has this the attitude of gratitude symbol on it, and also Pass on Perfection and Go for Greatness. My YouTube channel, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and a couple other things as well. So it's linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon. And they can also reach out to me at chrisdtgordon.com. That's GORDON, spelled the right way.
Very nice. I appreciate your time. This has been a wonderful interview. I think we've learned a lot, and I love the attitude of gratitude. I love Pass on Perfection and Go for Greatness. These sound like incredible programs. I know that you're going to motivate people all over the country with those talks, and hopefully we'll see each other on a stage real soon. I can't wait to get back to these in-person presentations, which, by the way, I think it's going to be here very, very soon. I am starting to get bookings in person that are starting in August. So
nice.
That just happened today. So here we go.
Excellent.
Yeah, buckle up.
Fingers crossed, folks. Fingers crossed. Well, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Of course. It's my pleasure, Chris. And to our listening audience, if you like this discussion with Chris DT Gordon, make sure you like it. Make sure you share it with others in your network that think that might find some value in Chris's words. And we will see you on another episode of Fraternity Foodie. Thanks so much. See you soon.